about making sure that when you're bringing talent in, you're not ticking boxes, you're actually bringing talent in. Just because you're looking to increase the amount of diverse talent that you're trying to bring into the business, it's important that those are people who you really feel are going to progress in the organization and that they're going to be really successful. Because it's not like, I'm not just trying to be altruistic here. This is about creating a really, I drive a very high performance culture in the businesses that I run. So this is about doing good business as well. In a business where you're communicating to multiple different audiences, how can you really understand the best messaging to reach or resonate with an audience if you don't have that audience reflected in your workforce?
100%. Josh, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. How are you?
Nice to see you again. Interestingly, you got plants behind you. Are those real?
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
I asked
They
that because
are.
most of our guests now, like me, have got the fake ones. They can't because they
Oh, right.
struggle.
No, they are real. I mean, I'd be lying if I said that we always keep them alive. We don't, but we're doing our best. But these are all real. Yeah, there's no plastic ones behind me.
I
No.
love it. I love it. My friend gifted us a cactus, and I still somehow managed to not
I've
keep
done that.
a
Don't
cactus.
worry.
I was like, how
I've
did
done
you
that.
not keep a cactus alive?
Yeah,
It normally
yeah,
survives in the desert. You
yeah.
guys.
I think I might have drowned my one. So,
Before we jump in, tell everyone a little bit more about your personal background and the journey to the role that you're in now.
so I work for a company called GroupM, which is the it's the UK's, and it's a global business. It's basically the media operation for WPP, which is a big marketing services organization, and GroupM is the number one media investment company in the UK and in EMEA and in the world. And I'm the CEO for EMEA and for the UK. So I sort of run both businesses, which is a bit weird because normally we have one person running the UK and one person running EMEA, but at the moment I'm doing both. And so it's kind of media and advertising agency background that I have. I've been working in the industry since 1998. So that's quite a long time. It's about 26 years. And I've always worked in agencies all my career. I've had my own agency business at one point. I've worked for global organizations like the one I'm in now. I've worked for small independent agencies that are just UK based. I've worked for creative advertising agencies, but I've always been on the agency side. Yeah, I love our industry. It's a very exciting, kind of dynamic industry to be in. And that's what I've always done. I mean, kind of by accident, honestly. I didn't even know media agencies existed when I was at university, and somehow I've spent the last 26 years in one. So
Yeah.
so yeah, that's how these things. I'm sure a lot of your listeners who work in HR, in particular, understand that.
It's a running joke on our show. Like every CHRO, like we've done 700 episodes, and like 10 of them chose a career in HR. Like no one was like, "Hey, I want to work in HR when I leave uni."
Really?
Like yeah, no, like honestly, like and they come from all different backgrounds. I was interviewing L'Oreal CHRO recently, and she was in their research division for 20 years.
Yeah.
R&D, and now she's the chief HR officer. Or Lego's chief HR officer was in sales for most of his career, and now he's the chief HR officer of Lego. Like very rare, actually. Do you have anyone in this? Or me and Shane, we grew up playing ice hockey and breakdancing, and now we do this stuff in HR because I happened to get a sales job selling to HR executives, and thought, oh, this is really interesting. And now we're here, so it's always fun. You never really know. You got to taste. I always say to people, you got to taste different things. When you're young, use that as an opportunity to taste as many things as possible, and then figure out what is it really where your passion lies. Because like it's really difficult to grow up and be like, this is what I want to do. 99% of people I know who decided that are currently not in a career in that space.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think it's good advice as well about, try as many things as you until you sort of find your sweet spot. It's definitely the right thing to do. People shouldn't feel fearful of, trying things new. And I often sort of say it's when things are going well that's a good time to try something new and actually change rather than waiting for things
I
to
love
go.
that. I always say that to people. I say to Shane, I'm always get scared when things are going too well. He's like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, because I feel like we're not pushing ourselves or innovating or learning new things. It's kind of like a middle ground of seeking discomfort, as we call it here. We've always kind of Shane, by the way, is my next door neighbor growing up, and now we're co-founders. We've been
Oh,
on this
right.
whole journey together, and we're always these strange kids of when something gets too easy, we lose interest and we're off to the next challenge. We've always been like that.
Mm.
And then we both decided to go into business together, knowing that about each other, that we are always like, what's next? You know, now for the last couple of years, we're immersing large language models and AI because that's a
Mm.
whole new forefront that we're discovering as a business, and we're launching our own co-pilot. So it's that's the exciting thing.
Yeah.
I don't like being comfortable. I think when things are going really well, I'm like, okay, we're gonna get disrupted right now.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
it's
to be fair, I don't think I've ever felt completely comfortable, uh, but yeah, I know what you mean, and I think it sounds like you've found a very good partner in crime,
very
um,
lucky, very
to
lucky.
yeah to kind of hold each other to account and push each other and
Yeah, and
work.
we've not strangled each other yet. I don't know how that's gonna happen. It's very hard to do that with friends and separate the two.
Yeah,
I wouldn't recommend anyone getting into business with their friends, but
yeah.
for some crazy reason it does work.
Oh, good.
Yeah. What about your? Obviously, you're also the president of the IPA. Talk a little bit about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so the IPA is the Institute for Practitioners of Advertising, which is basically our industry body. And yeah, I'm very honoured to be asked to be the president last year before, yeah, the end of the year before last. So you get a 2-year tenure. So I've just finished my first year um, as president, and I'm really loving it. Actually, it's a really cool thing to be doing. I'm obviously very busy with work, but it's funny. There's that old expression: if you want something done, give it to someone who's busy. And
I
I,
haven't heard of that one before, but I like it. Okay.
yeah, well, I think it's really true. Give it to a busy person, and I feel like it's not a burden to have that additional responsibility, because what the IPA allows me is a real opportunity to try and affect the industry in a really positive way, trying to sort of put, what you do is you get given 2 years, and it's up to you to set out what your agenda for the industry is going to be for that two years. And you set out a manifesto, and then you put in place various things to try and deliver on what your agenda is. So yeah, so I set out an agenda this time last year, and we've made great progress so far. I've got an amazing team at the IPA who really helped me on that journey, and it's all about it's a people first agenda. So um, I think it sort of rings true for most leaders in our industry. I don't think there's anything more important in my industry, because the advertising industry, it's all about, we don't manufacture anything. We don't have lorries. It's just creativity, and it's all about people and their great ideas, and they're not our greatest asset. They're our only asset, really. So it's really important to kind of to put them first, and to really focus on what's best for our people, and how we can continue to have a thriving industry. So that's really my focus.
Yeah, I've always found that fascinating about your industry, that your people are your product. Now that doesn't sound, you know, but in reality, like their creativity. So if they're not operating at the highest level, and if you're not creating psychological safety, you're not taking care of their well-being, all those things are directly impacting your product and the
Yeah,
creativity and the innovation that comes
yeah,
out of that. Not many industries have that.
yeah.
It's very unique.
Yeah, I mean, it's a creative industry, so that's what the creative industries are all about, really. And ours is another one that, by the way, drives a huge amount for our economy here in the UK. So it's quite an important creative industry for us as a country. And actually, it's an industry that's always been a bit sort of work hard, play hard culture. Um, and I think in this day and age, that doesn't really, it just doesn't really ring true for employees. I think it's really important that I don't actually, I think COVID's had a really big impact on the culture of work. And I think that, but even before that, I think there was a real I think well-being and mental health were becoming increasing issues just in the world, and I felt like that's been something that our industry has, I think that work hard, play hard culture has taken its toll on our people over the years, really. So that's really at the heart of what I'm trying to sort of change, I guess, in the ad industry world.
Yeah. Talk us through then you got the three tenets of this agenda, of the people first agenda. Talk us through that.
Called it, I've sort of said, I've called it opening eyes, opening hearts, and opening minds. And opening eyes is really about trying to is really about trying to attract the best talent into our industry, and the way to do that is really to open the eyes of potential candidates coming into our industry of the positive impact that advertising has on society. I think a lot is talked about in terms of some of the negative things that impacts advertising has, but I think there's a lot of good that our industry does. I think I think the biggest brands or the fastest growing brands over the last 10 years are ones who've really focused on purpose and on what positive impact they can have on the world. And it's advertising's role to get that message out there, really. And advertising has a big role to play in driving culture, and that is something that traditionally used to happen in kind of water cooler moments on TV, but increasingly now it's in digital platforms like TikTok, Instagram, um, and all media, honestly. And so I think so. My first area is really about kind of various different initiatives on to focus on that, really kind of the relevance of advertising on modern British society. The second one is opening minds, opening hearts. And what that's about is really retaining diverse talent in our industry. So once we've attracted them through opening eyes, I think I think we're much better than many industries at attracting diverse talent, whether that's socioeconomic, gender balanced, or racial backgrounds into our industry at an entry level. So I think if you were to walk around one of the agencies, or if you walk around any of the WPP campuses, so just talking about my business, but I'm not saying this is just in my business, it's in many of our competitors as well. I think if you walk around agencies these days, they do feel much more reflective of society. Like I think you do see a lot more kind of black young talent in the agencies. It feels much more kind of I don't know, fresh and exciting and reflective of society. But if we're really honest with ourselves, when you look at more senior roles in our agencies, you don't see that. You still see it's quite white, it's quite middle class. And I think that the reason for that is that although we may sometimes be patting ourselves on the back for attracting diverse talent in, we're not brilliant at making them feel like they belong in our industry or that they belong in that agency. And that's not something that's done intentionally. I think all leaders have very positive intent, but I think that I think we've struggled to really change the kind of systemic behaviors that might make people feel a bit other, honestly.
Yeah.
So, so opening hearts is about kind of really trying to surface the best in class practices to make people feel more included, whatever background they come from. So that's the second one. And the third one is opening minds, which is about how do we make our people feel supported and mentally healthy and have a good balance in their lives, in their working life, honestly, and help them thrive at work. Because I think that if going back to what I was talking about earlier, if we can have a thriving kind of happy workforce, then the opportunities are endless of what we can achieve. So that's really the third bucket, really, in my kind of people first agenda. And if I'm really honest, that's probably where most of I mean, there's been work been done in all three, but I think probably the most noise has been around the third one and around some of the programs that we've introduced around kind of mental health and well-being in the industry.
Yeah. Firstly, I think all three of those kind of go hand in hand as well, and all complement each other. So my last podcast I did earlier, which I was talking about with Mental Health UK, Health England, was talking about the connection with DEI and well-being. You can't have one without the. I mean, they work, they play so well together. But you're right. I feel like a lot of companies. There's so much to unpack about what you said. Firstly, great to hear that your talent is representing the local communities that you serve. Because when I came into the workplace 20 years ago, it was a whole floor of white male men. And I was confused because I was like, the local community that in East London that we served didn't reflect that. And I was very confused as someone who went to school with, I was very diverse classroom of leaders. So that's great to hear. But one of the challenges that I see companies having, and you just mentioned it, is they can attract that talent, but they leave just as quickly because they're not creating a workplace where they feel like they actually belong.
Yeah.
As well. So it's one thing actually bringing in the talent into organization, but if you haven't set them up for success and created a workplace that they feel like they can belong, they have the psychological safety, they can actually see themselves in the leadership. They can see people that look and sound like them as aspirations to grow and develop. It's going to be really difficult for you to
Yeah, and I
keep that
think
talent.
I totally agree with that. And also I think it's about making sure that when you're bringing talent in, you're not ticking boxes, you're actually bringing talent in. So just because you're looking to increase the amount of diverse talent that you're trying to bring into the business, it's important that those are people who you really feel are going to progress in the organization and that they're going to be really successful. Because it's not like I'm not just trying to be altruistic here. This is about creating a really, I drive a very high performance culture in the businesses that I run. So this is about doing good business as well. And equally, in a business where you're communicating to multiple different audiences, how can you really understand what the best messaging to reach or resonate with an audience if you don't have that audience reflected in your workforce?
100%. Yeah. Like what part of what I do every day is I interview chief diversity officers as well, right? And my wife hosts one of the biggest DEI podcasts where she interviews chief diversity officers every day, and we always talk about that, what you just mentioned, the innovation, the diversity of thought that you're bringing into the business. To your point, how can you serve those communities if that's not represented internally in your own
Exactly.
organization, right? And some of the most innovative, groundbreaking products have come from companies that are very good at doing that. I was speaking to Unilever recently, and they was sharing some specific examples from their ERG groups and from some of the ideas that they developed that they've turned into products that have added, another couple 100 million into the business because someone said, actually, there's what about this? Or save them hundreds of millions by not, you know where I'm going with this, from not making a mistake and doing something. What was the one I heard like years ago about the Dyson? You heard the one about the Dyson hand dryers? You heard that one?
No,
So
I don't know. Maybe gone.
it's really random, but they one of the leaders, I'm not going to mention their names at Dyson, told me that, and this isn't, and I don't know if this is true. So allegedly, it was programmed that when you put it was programmed for white hands when you put it in. So if you put a black hands in, it takes a couple of seconds more to turn on. And I've tried this with my friends, and it's 100% true as well, because the way it was designed to detect white hands when you put it in there, the ones
That's crazy.
the sensor, for example, right? There's a million other examples like that you see as well, especially in my wife tells me stories in the beauty space around beauty products. As well, that are not only specifically designed for different skin tones, etc. So it's really important that you have that diversity of thought and perspective.
For sure.
Even my team have called me out on certain times that we haven't reacted to something, or we've made mistakes in some of the content we've produced, and they've been like, "Hey, Chris, like, hey, well, firstly, I'm disappointed that we didn't react to something like that. We should have taken the stance and shared our support." Example is sort of the Black Lives Matter George Floyd situation. I made a video. I didn't post it, and my wife's black, and she was like, "I'm really disappointed that you didn't post that because you were worried about saying the wrong thing, which is why you didn't post it." But that's the issue we have. Is
Yeah.
and I was like, okay, that's very
It's
different.
really difficult because, you talk about, you were talking about psychological safety before, and I think people are still very scared of saying the wrong things,
Yeah,
even though they've got really positive intentions. And I think it's really important that everyone's open in this conversation about, yeah, getting it wrong, but correcting it, but with a positive intention. And I think so I really understand that. I find myself in those situations all the time as well. And, you can't. So, I'm in a position where I have to be very careful about what I say and what I don't say, what I comment, because I can offend lots of people. I've got a workforce of 17,000 people coming into me, so whatever I go out and say, it usually pisses somebody off. It's like
yeah, yeah.
tricky.
And
You got to.
I didn't realize that the more our audience has been growing, the more I realized that's going to happen, and I just had to come to terms with that. Um, Along the way, I didn't realize that it's an effect of our growth, which is a good thing. But I just
Yeah.
realized that I'm not going to please everyone along the way. But in terms of the opening minds side, the well-being, what are some of the projects or programs that you've been doing that you feel are really truly making a difference?
So I think, look, I'm not someone who really, I don't like to talk too much about kind of initiatives. I like to talk more about sort of kind of broader approaches to things. And I think, but I do like threes. So you'll have noticed that
I noticed that already. Yeah.
I'm going to give you three more now. But what I've tried to do is I've tried to crystallize what I think is a good approach to mental health and well-being in the workplace. And this doesn't just come from me, it comes from so before I became president of the IPA, I'd established an advisory board around mental health and well-being in the workplace, with an incredible board of people from across mental health training companies, academia, businesses like Unilever. Where else from kind of McKinsey Health, the World of Wellbeing movement, to try and understand what are sort of like the macro things that really need to happen in an organization to have a kind of positive, healthy workplace. Yeah. And really, and we were working as an advisory board on how we might talk to government about actually introducing a law around how leaders of companies above a certain size might demonstrate how they're looking after their people, right? So that was over like 5 or 6 years. And I've actually taken all of the stuff that we were working on into my IPA agenda, and I've introduced it as a rather than kind of like a mandate. I've asked business leaders from within the IPA, but I'm starting to ask, like, everyone's kind of signing up for it. So now I'm trying to broaden it out across the creative industries, to get people. And it's kind of like I would call it's sort of a blunt way of putting it, but it's like a mental health certification type approach to leadership of companies. And it's in three areas. So I've called it empower, support, and prevent. So empower is about empowering the individual through awareness, through education, to understand their own mental health, and also to understand the difference between, something like a psychosis or a neurosis or just a bad day at work. Yeah. So kind of empowering individuals, teaching them about resilience and how to kind of be able to look after their own well-being, really, but also to understand their mental health. So that's the kind of the first tenet. The second is what I'm calling support. And what that's about is about what can the business do to support people who work for their company, right? And that could be taking it from like training people to like an extreme of actually providing mental health support to people who are really struggling with a mental health issue. And then the third one is prevent. And for me, that's almost like the most important one. Prevent is about having ensuring you don't have a toxic workplace culture, right? So having all of the right things in place to ensure that there's real transparency in your company. So making sure that companies have things like staff surveys where they're totally anonymous, where they learn how their people are feeling and how they're experiencing life at work, and then playing back to their people what they've learned about them and what they're doing to try and address some of the issues that are coming about. Because what's very clear is that, number one, the biggest negative impact that you can have on someone's well-being at work is having a toxic workplace culture. And two, there is a huge chasm between company policy and actually how people are experiencing work on the ground, right? So, so those are the three areas of my kind of opening minds thing around mental health and well-being. And what we're doing is we've launched what we're calling Adlan's Wellbeing Lab. And in that lab, it's kind of an online resource, but there's also going to be kind of workshops during the summer. There's an online resource of some of the best resources that you can find to help you around each of those three areas, whether it's empower, support, and prevent. And it's categorized on the website that you can easily find at the IPA website. You don't need to be a member of the IPA to access it, by the way, it's there. It's got loads of really brilliant resources that show great examples of how to put in place different empower, support, and prevent strategies in your workplace. And then, so that's the first part. And the second part is we've got what we're calling the People First Promise Badge of Honor. And so we're inviting member agencies and other creative companies to apply for a People First Badge of Honor. And all they need to demonstrate is they need to provide one piece of evidence of each of those three things: empower, support, and to prevent, in their workplace. And then they get this lovely plaque and a People First Badge of Honor, which hopefully will be something that attracts talent into their businesses themselves.
Yeah.
And also clients to work with them, because clients are increasingly taking this stuff seriously.
Yeah, it's now becoming a must for companies when they're looking at who they're going to work with, right? For their suppliers as well. Similar from a DEI lens, right? There's certain requirements. Firstly, I love the freeze. I think it's important though, because also it's easy to remember, and you also need to create a brand. You would do that. You're in the industry of doing that. I'd be surprised if you didn't. For people to remember, because some companies they offer a lot of these things, but they don't really create something memorable that people. And so I'm glad that you're doing that. Also, great for everyone listening right now to be able to, and I'll put that link to the website below, so people can go check out those resources as well.
Yeah.
And
I mean, what I want to do is I want this to over time. I want this, once we've, I'm doing the ad industry, and then we're moving out broader into the broader creative industries. But after my time at the IPA, I do want to broaden this out into just business as a whole. So, anyone, I'd love different companies from all sorts of different sectors to sign up for it.
We do something similar. So we have a wellbeing event called Ripple. We do every year. Okay. So we bring together around 3,000 CEOs, chief HR officers, heads of wellbeing. Something I did it with partnership with Ariana Huffington, Thrive Global. Also, at the time, the chief HR officer of Walmart and a couple of others. And
I've heard of Ripple, actually. I have. I remember now.
Yeah. So
our global chief people officer told me about that.
Yeah, so we do it every year. It's a 5-hour live stream. We bring the leaders from all over the world, do sort of panels around different of these themes that we're talking about, and we offer obviously different companies, organizations that bring in different free resources to the table. And even between the live stream breaks, we have like a mindfulness session. Then we get everyone out of their chairs at home doing some exercise between other. So it's a full day where we bring together companies and leaders from all over the world. And we started that during the pandemic as a response to really help people, especially that were struggling. And it's been amazing. Now we do that every year as well. So like for us, it's been something, as someone who personally suffers from anxiety and hid it from my wife and friends and family for 15 years and still continue. That was something that we really wanted to give back. And I find out, and obviously we do events, so that's our medium to be able to bring all those people together. So I love what you're doing, and I definitely thinking if you're going to do it where it goes beyond your industry, that would be very helpful for everyone.
I hope so. But what you just described there about struggling with your own anxiety and not telling people about it is just such a common thing. And, I think it's just something that the more we can normalize the conversation around that, the better. I think it's, I talk quite a lot about and the reason, kind of what I was why I was interested in this in the first place. So I've been talking about this for kind of like, decade really.
Hmm.
um, was that I struggle with insomnia because of my anxiety about work. Like I'll wake up in the night and I
That's
won't be able.
me. That is
Yeah,
literally, I was awake till like 3 a.m. last night thinking about work and everything that was going on, and
yeah.
end up going downstairs just to, just to reset and then kind of go back to bed again. That's been
I did exactly the same. I was this 2:30. I was down here at my desk, which is downstairs in my house,
yeah,
writing notes. And then I went
yeah,
back up, and I still couldn't go back to sleep for ages, to be honest with you, reading my book and everything. But I don't get it every night, but I get it when I'm particularly stressed. And um, loads of people do. And that's the point. And
yeah.
I think
No,
it's
that's the thing. Yeah,
important that people, that we talk about it, because I think people often look at, you're a successful businessman. I've achieved certain success in my world, and I think people need to hear that it's not always rosy. Actually, it's quite difficult, and that's very common, and people aren't alone, and that it's quite common for people to feel like that.
the funny one thing I noticed, which really helped me come out and talk about it, because I'll tell it quickly, but everyone knows the story because they've heard the podcast so many times. Is I was speaking to Tim Munden, who's the chief learning officer at Unilever, who was also their global head of Wellbeing, and was doing a podcast. And he shared that he just came back from 2 months mental health leave, and I was like, wow, here's this amazing leader that I have respect, who's being vulnerable, and that was what encouraged me to share live on LinkedIn with Tim how I was feeling, and everyone found out that way. So it's a crazy way of doing it. I wouldn't recommend this to everyone to do it on LinkedIn Live, but I felt safe in
No,
that
but it is a
space.
good. Yeah, I think it is.
He made me. I was like, here's this person that I really have respected and followed for many years, who's willing to do this, and even if one or two people that were listening to that podcast made them feel the same way, it's worth it
Yeah,
to do that. And off the back of that, friends, family members, one of my best friends was actually in counseling. I was like, dude, we see each other every day,
mm,
and neither of us were comfortable telling each other how we were feeling and what we were going through. But to your point, the reason I never did that is I spent 10 years in a company where it was toxic. And the one time I actually did go to my manager and try to explain how I was feeling, I was told to shut up, man up, and get back on the phone. That was
right.
the exact words. Is a a very high pressure sales environment. And I was like, okay, I'm never going to bring that up ever again.
Yeah,
Right. And then I thought, oh, I can't tell my next boss either, because what if they don't promote me? Right. So throughout my whole career, I had this sort of I can't tell my wife, what if she thinks less of me? I can't tell my employees because they're going to think I'm a weak leader. Those are all the things that I was constantly sort of battling with day to day. And then I started seeing all of these high performers were all suffering the same way. And then the more I got to know and ask questions on and off the podcast, I was like, wow, the people that I look up to as the most high performing people in the world are the ones actually sometimes suffering the most.
yeah,
But you don't know about it. All you see is the success
yeah,
of those people. You don't see what's happening behind the scenes.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so that
And I think
yeah.
I think it's very true. Um, and what you described there in your sales job, I think was a very common trait in any business. Honestly, when I started off, definitely it was the same where I was working. It was a lovely company, and I haven't got a bad word to say about them. But if I turned around to my boss and said, I'm having a wobble, I wouldn't have got much sympathy, because that's not what happened in those days. But thankfully, it's not, it shouldn't be like that. I mean, it is like that in some companies, but I think it's becoming less of the norm, I would
We've
say.
come a long way.
But it's not,
100%.
yeah, but it's not surprising that, I think people often look at look at, this sounds like I'm pitting myself, and I'm not, but I think people look at senior people in an organization and they sort of go, yeah, you're the devil, or you're the man, or whatever. And, um, I understand, and sort of a lot of the way that people feel, like might feel stressed, or like bad decisions being made about a company, and it's good to be able to go, it's the boss's fault, but often it's the boss. The boss is is having to carry a lot of the burden of that responsibility is quite stressful. So it's no coincidence that you're hearing that a lot of these senior people are struggling with these things because they heavy as
It's
the
lonely
head.
at the top. Yeah, it's lonely
Yeah,
at the top. Like HR leaders are the biggest culprits. They all know. You all know. You're listening right now. They're looking after everyone else but themselves.
yeah,
So I speak to HR leaders every day that are burning out, that are retiring early, that are really struggling. Because who do they go? Who do they go talk to?
yeah,
Who does the HR? Who does the CHRO go talk to in the business?
yeah. Well,
When they should go to their CEO, but
they should. Yeah,
in many times they just don't feel comfortable.
yeah,
As well, and then again, similar to your point, most co-founders I speak to and CEOs very lonely. For me, my outlet is my coach, Chester. He's
yeah,
like, for me, he's impartial. He'll tell me how it is, and
yeah.
I have that, and that was one of the biggest game changers for me. Actually, was getting a coach, as someone I could actually, not just Shane. It's great, obviously, I have a co-founder, but having someone separate that I can actually have a
Yeah.
conversation with was
No,
huge.
I think it's really important, actually. Yeah, I do. I think coaches have an important, really important role for leaders.
Yeah. Interesting question. I didn't plan on asking this, but what does success look like from you when you think about the CEO CHRO relationship and partnership?
Well, I mean, I speak to my chief people officer every day, often multiple times a day. She's on my favorites list on my phone, and she poor thing. She's for her sins. So she's often the first person I call in the morning and the last person I call at the end of the day. And I think it's really important to have, you know, absolute trust, um, total safety. It's really important that she totally takes the piss out of me all the time, and that, and I do her as well, so that we have that. I feel, I mean, I don't know if you asked her, she might say something else, but I don't think there's a more important relationship in a business, honestly, because I mean, I can't speak for all leaders, but I think when I think about myself, the stuff that keeps me up at night is less about kind of where should I be investing, or how we can win that pitch, or it's always about people. It's always the people stuff that's the stuff that keeps me up at night. And so it's really important to have a very close relationship, honestly, between the chief CEO and chief people officer. And I think if you don't have that, actually, it can have really negative implications all the way down through an organization, um, if that's missing. Because I think if the chief people officer doesn't feel completely kind of toe to toe with the CEO, then I just think that it just ladders down through the business.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think it's critical.
How do you establish that relationship when you first connect? What are some of the ground rules you set? Like, for example, how do you deal with conflict? Do you have a framework around how you navigate that together? Because that's a challenge that I feel like CHROs have with their CEO, this sort of balance of when do they challenge, and many of them.
Well, I think
Yeah.
the truth is I don't have one, and that's my failing probably. I don't have a framework personally. I think the way that I work with everyone or most people, I would say, who are in my kind of circle, who work into me, is it has to be completely trusting. So that means total openness and transparency. I don't hold anything back. I'm very honest about my own vulnerabilities and my worries, and I invite challenge. So I sort of say, look, I don't know what I'm talking about here, but this is what I think. What do you think? Kind of thing. Um, and so I think it's really important to have a culture in your team where people feel safe to challenge you, um, as a leader, and that almost like it's kind of, you're rewarded for it, because there's nothing worse than not feeling like you can say what you think. And the truth is, I always hire people around me who are better at what they do than I would be. So I'm paying them to be the specialists in their particular area. So I trust them implicitly in what's right and I'll challenge them, like, and I'll challenge my chief people officer on things, and she'll generally tell me I'm wrong, but sometimes she might say, no, you're right. Maybe you're right about that. Because some of these things, they're not black and white,
they're not
you
binary.
know.
Yeah, no, I get
Yeah.
it. I think it's just one of the things I hear, especially from the CHROs, we do our private sort of every month we get together 100 CHROs on the largest brands in the world, and no media, no cameras, and in those conversations, one of the things they always tell me is one of the reasons I come to this event, Chris, is the one time that I am challenged. And I was like, what do you mean by that? They're like, well, all the other CHROs here are not afraid to tell me that I'm wrong, or actually maybe you should look at it a different way, because we create that safe space. But many of them also say that is an issue because they need a team around them that will challenge them. But the answer to that is, well, I mean, are you creating that space that they feel that they can? Are you creating that environment that you are receptive to that feedback? Do they feel psychologically safe? And I can only imagine that would be the same for you as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I guess I try to have, and let me clear, some days I haven't got my game face on as well as I'd like to, but particularly days after I haven't had a good night's sleep. But what I sort of want is for that safe space to be just everywhere always. So it's not like, I want everyone to feel that. And I think it's really important that when we talk about role modeling, that we don't allow, bad behavior in the team. However talented somebody is, you need to be respectful people who communicate respectfully, challenge respectfully, and if you don't, you need to change that, and you need to be seen to change that.
I've made that mistake before.
What's that?
I said I've made that mistake before, where I've where I've kept someone around that the very high performer. Example will be sales. I had someone who was amazing at sales, bringing millions of pounds a year, but was just toxic to everyone else. But I was like, but they make so much money for the company, right? So I think we've all been in similar positions. But the moment you remove that person, wow, does it make a difference? And you see it? You can't really see it. Sometimes you're blinded by that. I've made that mistake. I've learned from that mistake in the past. But But listen, I can talk to you forever, but I've got to let you go at some point. Before I let you go, where can people learn more about the work that you're doing, and also connect with you directly if they want to reach out and say hi?
Well, you can find me on LinkedIn, and you can, if you go to the IPA, I think it's ipa.co.uk, or
I'll find a link. Put it in the chat below as well. No worries.
If you go to the IPA, you'll see the Wellbeing Lab and the People First Promise Badge of Honor, and you kind of you can see my speech where I talk about my agenda and stuff like that. If you're interested in hearing from me, then that's probably a good place to look, I would say. But don't worry, I won't be offended if you're not.
No, listen. No, honestly, thanks for coming. I appreciate what you're doing, and obviously everything you've just spoken about is aligned with everyone that's listening right now. It's high priority for everyone, including me. And I wish you all the best until next week.
Thank you. Thanks very much for inviting me on.
Thanks.